is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Hello and welcome into another edition of Three Ma. I am John Kurtz, joined by Derek Young, K-State Online fame, Cole Manbeck, former Manhattan Mercury fame. The gang is back together. DY and I are back from Vegas, and you know the drill. I mean, Derek was out in Vegas. There was probably something that was not as good as Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond bourbon consumed out there, because I don't know that they're in Vegas yet. Perhaps they are. Maybe if you're in Vegas and you listen to the show, because, you know, international podcast here, you can talk to your local liquor store about getting some Holiday Distillery in there. They're great folks who help us here on the pod, so please support them. Holiday Distillery, they are K-Staters. They offer you 360 vodka and Ben Holiday Bottled in Bond bourbon, and they have been great sponsors of the show for a very long time. Well, Derek was complaining about the heat. I handled it like a champ. You know, it was like 120 degrees the first day that we got out there to Vegas. I thought it was fine. You know, it's a dry heat, as they say, DY, not as bad as, you know, being a little bit more muggy around here. I was out trying to mow my yard yesterday and was sweating buckets. I don't feel like I sweat that much in Vegas. So I don't know. I thought it was okay. Thought it was fine.
If it's hot, it's hot. I hate that term. Oh, but it's a dry heat. Like
it's dry heat, DY. It's a dry heat.
Whatever.
Cole, how do you? Yeah, well, yes, it is very expensive. Now, Cole told us that we should have spoken to his wife, Vanessa, about the best tips for that, because, you know, one of my big Vegas takeaways is that we had to spend, my girlfriend and I, like $75 on, I think it was like a burger, a salad, sweet potato fries, and 2 waters at the little Burger Shack thing there. And it took like 2 hours to get. Room service was like 2.5 hours. I mean, it was crazy, dude. Trying to get food at the Bellagio was kind of a nightmare. So
you got room service too?
I didn't, because it was going to be like a 3-hour wait. So 2.5 or 3 hours, something like that. So we were like, well, forget this. I guess we'll go find something. And then walking down there to the little Burger Shack, stood in line forever. And then we had a salad, got all the way up to the room. You know, we were on like the 22nd floor or something, and then realized that they didn't give us any silverware, and we didn't have any silverware for this salad. And it's like, it was pretty late, and I was trying to get up really early the next morning, and we were just like, okay, well, this is just turned into like a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode at this point. But anyway, Vegas was fine. It was a lot of fun when we were in there at Allegiant Stadium. DY, here's another observation I had that I want to run past you. If you would have just, like, when I had my head down and I was working, which was most of the time there, like, it's pretty breakneck speed. Like, you're just, especially on Radio Row, trying to get interviews, just like go, 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 go. You could have planted me there without me knowing that it was in Vegas or Allegiant Stadium, and I would have thought, just, you know, quick scan of the room where I was at, I would have just thought that it was Jerry World. I really didn't feel like it did not feel very different to me from what we're used to in Arlington.
No, hey, I never said this aloud to anyone, so I'm glad you kind of brought this up too. Allegiant Stadium just feels like, at least inside, a replica of AT&T Stadium.
Yeah,
but the seats are black.
Yeah,
that's literally, and the layout of Big 12 Media Days was also identical.
You're right. Like the layout, even just, it felt like the layout of the stadium, and like kind of how you
sponsor on the
yes
top of each end.
Yes. Like how you come in, and just the way the suites and everything, like luxury stuff was set up as you're close to the field. Like, and then, you know, on both sides, it all felt, I mean, it was nice. It was very nice, but it all just felt a little bit generic. Even the two sides that they had one side that was kind of like the luxury bar area on one side, and on the right side, and then there's one on the left. One of them apparently was supposed to be just the media meal and media stuff, and the other one was supposed to be for the players and coaches. The first day, no one was really watching it, so like I was closer on Radio Row to the players and coaches, and I kept walking in there. I'm like, man, it seems like there's a lot of players in here eating with me. I don't know. And I had Wagyu brisket the first day in there, and I was just laughing because I'm like, this seemed fine. And then the next day they had like a huge security dude there, like trying to keep everybody out. So anyway, the point of that was to emphasize that they were so identical. I just didn't notice any difference, and I thought it was the same damn thing.
It was funny that you came down and sat beside me after grabbing some food, and you're like, man, this brisket is awesome. It's like, that's not ours. Why are you eating it?
I know, like on the other side, it was like sandwiches and stuff, you know? Or, like, it wasn't bad, but it was like sandwiches. And I'm sitting here with Wagyu brisket. So, you know, hey, you just walk in like you own the place, all right? I acted like I owned the place.
Yeah, you're over here bragging about your like expensive like brisket, and I'm over here with like a ham sandwich.
Well, listen, I was owed that after my experience the night before. I overpaid the night before. I may have underpaid after that, okay? It's okay. And actually what drew me up there is I was talking to Iowa State football players, ironically, in all of this, because I've been doing my anonymous survey for the Big 12 newsletter that I have out there, open for business, ofbnews.com, by the way, if you want to get subscribed to that. But I was talking to them for the anonymous player survey, and then I was like, well, I'm right here. Let me just go get some food. So, you know, Iowa State, as always, helping a brother out. Thank you, Cyclones.
Who were the Iowa State players there?
Jalen Noel, right?
Yep.
Jalen Noel. My bad, Noel. Jalen Noel.
Is it Jeremiah Keeper?
Yes.
Safety.
And
Yeah.
yes, and there was a third guy that I was talking to. I forget who that was.
They didn't take Rocco back.
No, they only take seniors. I guess it's a Matt Campbell rule. Only take seniors.
Yeah, there was no Rocco back there. But all right, well, Derek, maybe we should start with you, Cole. Let's start with you.
Yeah, what's up?
You said you listened to all the podcasts. What was your biggest takeaway, K-State wise, from all the K-State guests we had?
I thought the show missed me. That was one of my biggest takeaways as I listened. I just thought I could have used, me on there with you guys. No, I thought you guys did great. I really enjoyed listening to all the different interviews that you guys did. I always find it interesting to hear the different names that are getting thrown around and some of the excitement that's generated when like certain guys' names are brought up. And I thought it was very interesting to hear once again Keegan Johnson's name being thrown around, much like we did last year and battled through the injuries. But he felt like a consistent name that was repeatedly brought up by both the players and also by Chris Kleiman as a guy that has really stood out at wide receiver. Obviously, Garrett Oakley was named as well. But I'm trying to think on the defensive side of the football. So obviously, Marcus Siegel was there with you guys and was doing all the interviews. But one of my biggest takeaways was I was actually here. I was listening to a separate interview with one of the North Dakota State guys who was out there in Vegas and had Chris Kleiman on. And you could tell there was a certain comfortability. Not that he wasn't comfortable with you guys. He was comfortable with everybody. But he was even looser with this guy because he had a relationship there from the past. And Chris Kleiman just brought up out of nowhere, like, you got to talk to Siegel. Like, that kid is our next NFL player out of the secondary. He's better than Yeast. He's better than Josh Hayes. And DY, I think you wrote about this too. And you talked about this last year, DY, before the season, even that Marcus Siegel was a guy that they were already talking about when he came in from North Dakota State as the next NFL draft pick out of the secondary. But there seems to be a real buzz and excitement level for Marcus Siegel and what he's going to bring to the table here in year two. And as you think about his year last year, maybe a little bit of a slow start. He missed the first game of the season, didn't have time to really break in before going up against better competition, coming from the FCS level to the FBS level to Power 5 football. And then his first big game is against Luther Burden, maybe the fastest wide receiver in the country, most explosive, and there were some coverage breaks in that Missouri game. But as the season went on, Siegel was terrific, other than, actually finishing off a few interceptions, which I think was more fluky and probably a mental thing than anything. The bottom line to me is that he was always in position to make plays. So I have a real excitement level for this secondary, led by Siegel and also Jacob Parrish, Keenan Garber, and just Jordan Riley. Jordan Riley, another name that you hear talked about a ton, the Ball State transfer at safety. So I'll be honest, like, my biggest takeaway, like, after the Tuesday you guys did the interviews, like, I went upstairs. I told Vanessa, I was like, hey, tomorrow's July 11th. And she was like, what's July 11th? I was like, one more day closer to football. I was like, these guys got me jacked for football. And once media day hits, it just feels like it's right around the corner. Now we're on July 15th right now as we record this. Like, I'm getting geeked up for it, man. I'm pumped and cannot wait to bring more football content to everybody's way. But we're like 47 days out.
The couple.
Go ahead. Cole, I regret to inform you that Media Day was a little bit earlier this year than it usually is. So, I mean, you're not,
I know.
Okay, go ahead, Derek.
I was going to say a couple things on Siegel, too, is like he's probably already an all-conference player last year if he catches the ball at a 50% clip. And a lot of people joked with him at that Media Day, and he took it in stride. So I appreciate that from him. I think we brought it up how many times he dropped a clear interception. Even Mason Voth from KSO, one of my colleagues, obviously, and when he brought him on the show, he introduced him as Stonehands, and Siegel just started cracking up. He literally Stonehands.
Man, Mason, I watched part of that interview, and Mason just jumped right in. Mason
He's like, and now we're joined by Marquis Stoney and Siegel, and Siegel just thought it was hilarious. So, the fact that he can first, a very courageous move on the part of Mason Voth.
Yeah,
and second, cool Siegel kind of taking it in stride. I think he hears that from his teammates every day, so I think he's almost prepared for it at this point. But if he catches at a 50% rate, he's probably an All-Big 12 player already. Would have been preseason All-Big 12 this year. It's going to be an NFL guy. And when you talk to him, you could tell this is a guy that's not 1 foot out in terms of buying into what Kansas State is about and the culture and everything. He is very comfortable and very bought into what Chris Klieman wants to do, both from a culture and defense standpoint. 2 feet in, everything exactly the way Chris Klieman wants is exactly the way Marquis Siegel is going to do it.
Just continuing that lineage, man. I mean, you rattled off some of the names there, but they've done it with, I think Klieman even brought it to us, is even Reggie Stubblefield came in and had a really good, productive year. They just seem to be batting 1,000 on that, which is why you get really excited about Jordan Riley, who might be next in line in that group. As you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, Cole has a new hat today. It is courtesy of our friends at Home Field Apparel. He got it at homefieldapparel.com. You can use promo code 3ball24 for 15% off your first order. He is also wearing, I've been talking about this, the Big 8 Champs shirt from 1977. In basketball, you can get that glorious thing. Look at that. That could be on you. You could be wearing that to Bramlage Coliseum this year if you go check it out among 50-plus other K-State designs at homefieldapparel.com. And again, use promo code 3MA24 to get 15% off your first order. We are back in just a moment.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
All right, our biggest storyline from Media Day is brought to you by our friends at Elenco. You've heard us talking about them now. Premier home improvement company based out of Kansas City, and these guys are great K-Staters. We have all met them. They are awesome. So make sure that you support them. I'm just going to say, look, Avery Johnson was one of the big stars of Media Day. Now, there were some guys like Mike Gundy who were determined to make headlines. Ollie Gordon is somebody that people were watching out for obvious reasons because of the unfortunate headlines that he made. And then you got Coach Prime and Shedeur Sanders. But outside of really the Oklahoma State and Colorado thing, I mean, Avery Johnson, about as big a star as any DUI, I would say, that was there in Vegas.
Yeah, and he accepted it, right, and kind of wore it with pride as well. I mean, he would have put it this way. You're going around and you're making sure that you get, as a media outlet, you get every Kansas State player and in Chris Klieman. And we got the other 4 players pretty quickly. Brendan Mott, Hadley Panther, Austin Moore, Marquis Siegel. Got them within an hour and a half. A little bit later, we get Chris Klieman because they also have all these other obvious media obligations to the rest of the Kansas State media and to other outlets like the national outlets that are there and some other teams that also other teams media that also want to speak to them. Avery Johnson was the last guy we got. It was basically at the end of the day. It was funny because Chris Klieman sat down between Kurtz and I too, and was like, "Have you guys gotten everybody?" We're like, "Everybody but Avery," and he says, "Good luck." Knowing how much in demand his star quarterback is.
Yeah, and I mean, just strikes you every time you hear Avery Johnson talk just how incredibly mature he is. I mean, this is a guy that's a 19-year-old true sophomore on a stage at media day right out of the gate there. Only started one game in his career, and he's just so incredibly mature, shows the leadership intangibles. Like, he looked like a guy, a fifth-year senior that's been doing this media stuff for several years. We know that, but I think the national media now and other Big 12 media have gotten a sense. Avery Johnson is a star, and he's got that mentality of how to carry himself, just the leadership intangibles that you love to see from your quarterback.
He's just really calm. He's very calm. And you get that demeanor from him there. And we heard from some of the players, Hadley Panzer, I think we were asking about what he was like in the huddle. And that was definitely the similar sentiment that he shared with us as well. As I mentioned, make sure and get out and see our friends at Alenco. If you need anything done home improvement-wise in your home, they're based out of Kansas City. It's a local company, and they are all huge K-Staters, huge Cat fans. So they've been locally owned since they started in 1986. If you need new windows, if you're doing a bathroom remodel, they specialize in premium window replacements as well as Kohler Luckstone shower systems. If you need new siding on your home, they can definitely help you out there. They've got you covered with the best products and top quality service. And this is not just for the Kansas City area. They are also in Western Missouri, Northeast Kansas, surrounding KC metro areas. If you're in Manhattan, Emporia, Topeka, Wichita, or small towns like Cole from Rossville, Alenco can come your way and take care of your home improvement needs as well. So go to alencohome.com, spelled ALENCO home.com, and check out all the services they offer. You can also just give Sam a call if that's easier, 913-961-2165. He'll get you taken care of, and he's a cat as well. So you want to talk a little cat football, cat hoops, I'm sure you could do that as well. Thank you to our friends at Alenco. I don't know, thinking back to the Avery interview, I'm trying to, Cole, what did you take away from the Avery interview? I was trying to remember what, Avery, he's just calm and like confident, and you can definitely pick up on how damn confident he is, that borders on cocky in a way, but not in any sort of like overt way. I think there were plenty of other quarterbacks there who did a little bit more of that in terms of just like how the attitude came across. It's pretty laid back and reserved from Avery, but you can definitely tell that he's got that like, F you, I'm better than you in him.
Yeah. Gosh, I'm trying to think back to anything specific that he said that really stood out to me. And really in general, it was just the general media presence. DY, you've got one, you take it.
It wasn't even from our interview. It was for the one he did with Mason, that his hair might not be in the video game. That's disappointing.
Well, yeah, I saw the screenshot. Someone screenshot like what his little headshot looked like in the game, and it did not look like his hair was there.
No, that's disappointing.
Yeah, it looked like he had dark hair. I mean, hopefully they have the ability to adjust that, or at least he can do it when he's playing the game. But yeah, no, I mean, he candidly talked about his speed on the game, that he thinks he should be in the 90s, but he completely understands why he hasn't, because he hasn't put enough on film potentially yet to be there. Yeah, like Avery, just the general presence of Avery, the way he presents himself when he does these interviews, he's just different. Like, I'm telling you, this, DY. Like, you told me last year before we had him on the pod as part of the interview segment brought to you by Riverbank Brewing in Council Grove, when we did that through the NIL stuff last year and did like a 20-minute interview with Avery, and you just told me going in, like, he's going to strike you with just how incredibly mature he is. He's been that way since he's been in high school.
And because of that, and I wouldn't say he's tough to interview, but sometimes it's challenging because he has such a good stage presence, and nothing shakes him, nothing overwhelms him. And the reason is like, and I was covering him since he was like 9th or 10th grade in high school. Like, everything, even back then, and I'm sure even before then, was building up for this moment. So he's not like here unprepared or surprised or anything. Like, he's been trying to get here and, operated his entire life, routine, habits for this moment. Like, it was all about what he's getting into right now. And this probably isn't the final destination or the final goal either.
Yeah. You can tell, I mean, he's a guy that would have the command and respect in the huddle with his teammates. He's exactly what you want in a quarterback because of that ability. Yeah, everything in his life has been built up to this moment, and I think he's ready to go. I cannot wait for the season to get here and to watch Avery get unleashed in this new offense. I'll tell you, like, one of the other things that stood out to me, guys, just hearing Chris Kleiman in multiple interviews talk about, once again, evolving the passing schemes, right? Like, I don't necessarily view it as a shot at Colin Klein. Look, K-State's offense in like ESPN's SP Plus last year ranked 7th best in the country. All right, they had a good offense. But the passing schemes have been something that have bothered me over the years. Like, I don't think K-State is creative enough in how they get guys open, the route combinations that they have run over the last several years. And that dates back to Bill Snyder at the end of Bill Snyder 2.0 as well. And I'm really excited to watch what Connor Riley and Matt Wells bring to the passing attack and some of the new schemes that they push in, because Avery Johnson mentioned it as well. Like, you're going to see some changes to how they throw the football and some of the different things they do schematically from the passing standpoint. And I cannot wait to see what they do there and what looks different. And then playing more guys at receiver. I mean, Trey Spivey was a name that came up from a couple different guys, right? I think Avery Johnson highlighted him. One of the other veterans, I think it was Austin Moore, highlighted him as well. And when Austin Moore highlights someone, I kind of take notice. Austin Moore been around. I think this is year 6 for him. Very cerebral guy. And he mentioned Trey Spivey as well. So, like, guys like that are going to see the field more because they're going to simplify things to get the best players on the field for some snaps, which I know, John, was always a frustrating point for you and me at the end of Snyder 2.0, is just like, you got to find ways to get the best players on the field like Bill Snyder used to do in 1.0. Regardless if they don't know 100% of the scheme or the system, figure out a way to get your best playmakers on the field. And I feel like they're going to do that this year with the receiver group.
Certainly sounds like it. And I mean, as far as like passing concepts go, like, Matt Wells has been around the block for a really long time. And he was working with Jordan Love once upon a time at Utah State. Then he was at Texas Tech. And I know it was not nearly as successful an era as Texas Tech fans would have hoped, but that's not a place where we ever look back when he was there and say, like, man, that was a real stick in the mud offense that was trying to go 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Like, this is a guy that's been around the block and generally has wanted to spread the football around. So I would imagine that it is going to add a lot of different layers to the passing game. Whether or not that's good or bad, ultimately, I mean, still very much remains to be seen. But I think if you're hoping for a little bit more evolution there and seeing some different concepts there, I think that is enough evidence to me to point toward the fact that you're going to get it.
Yeah, there's probably some pros and cons to simplifying it the way that they've kind of described it, right? You simplify it, then you obviously have more guys that are probably going to be able to come in and contribute, and it enables maybe to get some of the more talented players on the field, even if they happen to be true freshmen or redshirt freshmen, and then you have Avery Johnson, and probably everyone knows what they're doing. Chemistry and cohesion probably comes up a little bit better in those situations. And yeah, you don't run into problems of miscommunication or a lack of depth. But, you got to think about it another way too, is, when you take away some of these more complexities, then you're probably going to be fooling the defense a little bit less. You might become a little bit more predictable in the passing game. Those are some things that they'll have to fight against, because if you take away, if you do run less option routes, or just, are a little bit more, I guess, playing in the middle, like this is the route, then you do become maybe more susceptible to how defenses can prepare and defend you too. So there is two sides of that coin. But something that I've kind of always said too is, at least for the past several months, is that when you have Avery Johnson, DJ Giddens, Dylan Edwards, Jace Brown, whoever else steps up and kind of becomes a real focal point, and they're as good as we think they are, that kind of overcomes sometimes, potential predictability or even, inexperienced offensive coordinators. So this will be the first time Connor Riley's the primary play caller too, and that still should be a storyline moving forward. Regardless of how inexperienced he is, he could be super good. He could be, not so good. We don't know how it's going to unfold. I would lean towards him being a really good offensive coordinator. But even if he wasn't, having Avery Johnson kind of, overtakes some of those deficiencies, should there be any.
Also heard Chris Kleiman say in one of his interviews, I believe he was highlighting, we talked about Trey Spivey, right? Redshirt freshman. Chris Kleiman highlighted that this redshirt freshman class coming into this season, the group that redshirted last year, in the 2023 season, that they're really high on a lot of these guys, which I took note of. Obviously, we've heard Spivey's name thrown about quite a bit. We've talked about Wesley Fair, Jack Fabris, both at the safety group, Kenigel Thomas, Donovan McIntosh, both at corner. I'm going to miss names when I try to rattle off all these names. I mean, Andre Davis is a guy that redshirted last year at wide receiver. Will Ancio, Andrew Metzger at tight end, and on. But they seem really high. Joe Jackson as well at running back. They just seem really high on this group of redshirt freshmen coming into this season. There's probably some guys that we haven't seen much of yet that fans are going to have on their radar as the season goes along here. There's some young players that are going to step up that they're high on.
And the redshirt freshmen that they're probably the highest on are the defensive ends that you didn't admit.
Yeah.
There's Chidi Obiizer, Jordan Allen, Ryan Davis. Asa Newsom's technically a redshirt freshman because he got hurt last season and played less than or played only the 4 games or 3, and probably played less than that. He got injured so early, so technically Asa Newsom also a redshirt freshman. But I would say I do pick up on that redshirt freshman kind of vibe, that trend that they've been mentioning. But it really seems like a lot of that is predicated on the defensive side of the ball because they do love Jack Fabris. They do love Austin Romaine. They do love Asa Newsom. Actually, Austin Romaine's technically a sophomore, but he's in that class. And then the 3 defensive ends that I mentioned.
How the hell did I forget about Chidi, Jordan Allen, and Ryan Davis? I mean, those are the guys, like we talk about defensive end, Brendan Mott, Cody Stufflebean is kind of the veteran guys there, but they are so high on these redshirt freshman defensive ends. And then obviously Asa Newsom. I think DYU'd asked Chris Kleiman if thought he'd be good to go. Chris Kleiman had said like he's a starter type for this defense coming off the torn ACL. You mentioned it. I think it was in practice like the 3rd or 4th week of September last year. So, you think about the saving grace there, if there is one, is that it occurred in September versus November. Like you think about Kobe Savage a couple of years ago when he tore his ACL in Baylor, that was in November. So the surgery was a couple months later. There wasn't as much recovery time yet. He still was good to go by the start of the season. I don't think he was 100% himself. So the fact that it occurred a couple months earlier, Asa Newsom probably going to be more closer to 100%, be ready to cut it loose, hopefully after a couple hits in games. So Asa Newsom, one of my favorite recruits over the last few years at Kansas State, has landed as well. A lot of talent on that defensive side of the football that are new names, which is really interesting because Bill Connolly actually had a article on ESPN previewing Big 12 Media Days, and I know Bill Connolly is on mind to a lot of K-State fans for what he had said, comparing Bill Snyder.
Bill Connolly, the hell out of here, Bill Connolly.
So Bill Connolly's 2024 projections has K-State's defense ranked 28th in the country, but as far as like returning production on the defensive side of the football, let's see here. I thought I had the defensive side of the football returning production. I think he projects. I can't find it. Oh, this is bad podcasting. I've got it in my notes somewhere, and we'll talk more in depth about this stuff in our August pods when we start to really break down the season and preview, look ahead. But there's quite a bit of production back on this defensive side of the football when it comes to Kansas State. So 79% of the defense is back returning production. That is the 12th highest in the country, which was a staggering number to me. On the offensive side, returning production is 46.5%, which ranks 107 in the country, but obviously a large part of that is because Will Howard is gone, and we know that Kansas State made that shift to Avery Johnson, which I saw some media guys, I guess you could call them media guys, trying to reshape the narrative on why Avery Johnson is the starting quarterback at Kansas State and that Kansas State wanted to keep Will Howard. It's really been a fascinating week of misinformation being spread around.
Well, name some names. Who are we talking about on that front?
Ian Boyd's dumbass. So,
Ian Boyd. You guys were all talking about in the Discord, by the way. Good chance to shout this out if you want to be a part of the basically the 3MA group text, the Discord. Go to patreon.com/3MA to get signed up. But you guys were saying because it was hard for me to keep track of like anything that was happening while we were in Vegas because there was just so much going on. But at one point, I saw you guys saying like Ian Boyd was saying something crazy and that Shahan may have put him in his place or something. And I was like, well, somebody show me where this is, because I couldn't find it when I went to go look for it real quick. So I never actually saw it. So I don't know what was.
You'd have to go into his replies, because that's the way it was going to show up. He was replying back and forth and was saying that there's no way that if Kansas State wanted to make a playoff this year, they would, and I'm paraphrasing, would have let Will Howard transfer. And that it was NIL driven as to why Will Howard transferred from Kansas State. They couldn't afford to keep both quarterbacks. So,
and then literally within the next 24 hours, a rumor came out that K-State was trying to offer $600,000 to a backup quarterback. So, suck it, Ian Boyd. I don't know. Like, where you gonna trust? Who do you trust, Jay Norvell or Ian Boyd, or neither? I guess I'll ask that question.
That's why
the backup quarterback Colorado State thing is also a fallacy, not someone that they were connected with at any point either. So that's not true. But go back to the Bill Connolly thing. Can I give because I know that you kind of went in there because he said that Lance Leipold took over a more horrendous situation than Bill Snyder, right?
Well, I think let's be fair to Bill Connolly. I think what he said was that the turnaround job that Lance Leipold has done to this point is even slightly more impressive than what Bill Snyder did. And then he went on to say, the hard part will be sustaining it, which, like, yes, quite obviously. I mean, Bill Snyder won 11 games 6 times in 7 years at one point. Like, yes, that will be and that was in a different era when he was still dealing with Nebraska close to the peak of their power. Colorado was good. It was like Texas, Oklahoma were in the league. Mac Brown was at Texas. Like, Bob Stoops was at Oklahoma, all these different things.
Right.
That aside, even then, just an asinine statement to say, I mean, look, Lance Leipold took over in the transfer portal era, which, yes, can make it harder, but if you're a good coach in this era, that's a shortcut to what you can do to beef up your roster. I mean, beyond that, Kansas was like 13 years removed from an Orange Bowl. K-State had been to one Independence Bowl and lost it the entire time, had not won a game in 3 years by the time Snyder showed up. So even if you want to go that, and just from a facility and resources standpoint, so much further behind. Kansas brings in a lot of money, if you haven't noticed, because of basketball. There's a lot of resources there that can help you out if you get the right coach in. So, I mean, it's just and Bill Connolly's a Mizzou guy. He's been around for a long time. He knows better. And he basically got pushed in the comments to say, like, okay, I kind of do know better. That was an infuriating one to me. And I know people say, well, I was getting texts from even KU fans who I'm pretty friendly with, like, well, why do you get so upset about fighting about whose program was worse and blah? And it's like, I mean, I understand why you look at that and say that's a stupid thing to argue about. And I'm one who's not about like going and touting it like all the time. I felt like for a long time there, we kind of fetishized it a little bit and wanted to throw it out too much. Yeah. Because it brings down the value of your program. But if the statement is that the turnaround job that Lance Leipold has done is better than Bill Snyder, well, that's where I'm going to come in and argue that, because it was that bad. Like, it was futility U. Sports Illustrated, right? Their college football preview that year, like, led with a 5-page article about how bad K-State was and that it was the worst program in college football history. Like, it was much worse. The straits were much more dire, and it's comparing apples to toothbrushes is what you're doing there. It's nothing against Lance Leipold at all, who I think is an elite coach, and it's clearly been one of the best turnarounds in college football history. But yes, I just railroaded you, DY, but you can't get me started on that one and not let me finish that. So go ahead.
It's funny because you got to hit on some of the things. One, I think Bill Snyder, obviously the turnaround the performance that he put is far more impressive than what Lance Leipold has done to date, and Lance Leipold's thing is still impressive. I was going to say, and I know the focus and your guys' arguments are on the turnaround itself and comparing job performances, but there is still a part of me, a stench that comes off of this as we're trying to, like, KU and K-State fans arguing over who's worse and wanting to be worse.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look,
I mean, by the way, can we also talk about who is this quarterback that Kansas's entire ceiling is based on this year? Is it who recruited him?
I know.
Have
you seen my mentions on?
I know that you know. Who recruited him? Oh, that's right. He was inherited. Like, Bill Snyder did not inherit Jalen fucking Daniels. Like, that's not, I'm sorry. That's a ridiculous statement, Bill. That's a ridiculous statement.
No, that's fair. I just wanted to get in. I will say, I think I might infuriate, and even without talking about KU at all, obviously we are right now, but like on Twitter, I think I infuriate KU fans more than any other media personality that might be out there. Like the kinds of comments and mentions that I am still getting is also impressive that they're still this triggered.
I'm glad you brought that up, DY. I didn't know if we were going to have an exploratory group conversation.
I got like some responses and comments and called names that I wouldn't even say on this podcast, and we're not even that PG rated.
Well, clearly, I mean, you just listened to me. I want to know. I don't want to be dragged into taking hate from anybody. I'm trying to lessen the amount of hate that I'm getting on the internet, so I want no part of this conversation.
Oh, come on, John. Come on.
Well, I don't want to dig into the conversation because I've got enough responses. I got called a CUNT multiple times.
What's that spell?
Nick, can we put a parental advisory sticker on the...
I do believe it says we are PG in the description of the show. Family oriented.
Well, you can bleep. You guys can bleep me if you want. Honestly, I feel like the effect is more when it's bleeped. I feel like it's funnier. So, we can bleep that.
I thought it was interesting when Jalen Daniels brought up the rumors. He could have nipped those a lot earlier if he would have liked during the season.
Something I've always said, and I'm not even like trying to drag any of these people down, but like if they didn't, they approached his injury throughout last season as a little like cloak and dagger type stuff, and I thought that left room for interpretation for people to kind of wonder what was going on, right? Because they could have just said he was out for the season. I don't think they ever did.
No. I mean, I thought it was strange when he said his teammates were coming up to him and asking him if the rumors were true, if he was really hurt, et cetera. I mean, I don't know if I would have admitted that. Like, you want your teammates. He's the leader of that football team, or should be.
Yeah, I will say, kids, they see something on the internet, like these age kids, and you guys should you know how it goes. Like, they grew up in this area, they see something on the internet, and they just immediately assume it's true almost, right? Yeah. They don't have as much of a filter as we do. Just like, I'll say this, when that rumor goes out about Kansas State potentially offering a backup quarterback $600,000 to come into the transfer portal, then everyone on the Kansas State roster, their ears and eyes perk up a little bit too as to the veracity of that. And then the coaches know that that's going to happen. And that's one of the reasons why they were not thrilled about that lie becoming so public, because then you have to do a lot of damage control in your own locker room.
Yeah, and so let's just clarify. So Norvell said that about his quarterback, and he said it about his receiver, back-to-back days.
Weird. He said, it said two different places, and the same number. Like the number kind of instantly made me think that this is probably a little bit BS. So, but I think it was all BS. But anyway, reason why coaches, people in the program don't like that stuff out is because then your players do ask questions. They do start to wonder. And the same thing probably happened last year with Jalen Daniels. When that stuff comes out there, then they do have questions and they do wonder, because it's the internet and you don't know what's true, what isn't. It is what it is. I know people say, well, if your locker room's that strong, like, would you really doubt it? Well, I could say the same thing about this K-State NIL thing. If your locker room's that strong, would the people really doubt it? No, they want answers. They want to know for sure.
That's just funny. Norvell, like, I assume it's his players or his players' agents using it as a negotiating ploy, like saying they, like, making something up, probably the agent community, because they're not seeming to be held liable in this era.
I don't think it came from the agent. It came from the player that told Norvell that. What I think is that the player was fabricating an offer to get more from Colorado State, knowing that he didn't have a market if he were to enter the portal.
I should be more clear. I assume that the agent maybe told the player that, hey, like K-State's offering you $600,000, he conveyed that to Norvell, then like if you're going to lie about something, like probably need to study up a little bit more and not pick the school with Avery Johnson as the quarterback.
Well, okay,
That's why I don't think it came from an agent. I think the player was like, I'm going to throw something out there to the coach to get him to bite and give me more money.
I mean, there's a lot to criticize Jay Norvell here for sure. I mean, first of all, the fact that floats out the number like, hey, the kid told me K-State offered him $600,000. Now, I'm not accusing K-State of anything, but I'm just saying that K-State offered him $600,000 in front of the most microphones that I'll see the entire year because I coach at Colorado State. So there will never be more microphones in front of me than there are right now. And I'm going to make that statement right now. Like, okay, big time eye roll there, Jay, to say, well, but I'm not accusing anybody of anything. You absolutely are. I know everybody ran with the talking point like, well, they have Avery Johnson. That's ridiculous. I will say, like, I think one of the biggest things that happened this offseason was them getting Taquan Roberson, and that was really important, and that was not going to come cheaply because you're asking a guy who was starter caliber, you know, at least at the school he was at before. I know it's UConn. It was not like it was a Power 2 school or anything, but starter caliber to come be a backup in all likelihood, you know, the best case scenario is that he comes to be a backup. That was going to cost some money. So, like, I would bet I have no idea. You know what? Maybe I shouldn't even throw out a number here because people will start getting mad at me. I have no idea, but I bet that did not come cheaply to get Taquan Roberson in here as a backup. So I actually didn't think that was like that outlandish. Like we were all talking about that at one point.
600 is pretty outlandish for the role. Yeah.
But I bet it cost six figures to get a backup like you wanted this year.
Low six figures.
The smallest six figures is still 6 times less than what they just claimed.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it definitely didn't. Like, John,
I'm just saying it's not, I wouldn't be quite as dismissive of like.
I would. Based on what I know, 600 is a ridiculous number. So
okay. On the core, I'm saying purely on the Avery Johnson talking point. I think people said it was stupid because, well, they have Avery Johnson. Well, you don't understand the dynamics of all this and how much you need a backup quarterback and what the backup quarterback market is going to be like if you want to go get somebody that you think can at least be borderline starter quality if the worst were to happen. That's going to cost you some money. So, like, I didn't think that piece of it. I thought that part got a little bit too overblown in all of this. That's all I'm saying.
Well, my only piece of that was, like, I agree. Like, they really wanted a number 2 quarterback in the portal, a veteran guy that could step in just to give them more depth there. But my rolling eyes thing was just they're not offering anywhere close to $600,000 for a backup quarterback. Like, it might be low 6 figures, but yeah, it was probably
who I think was Ian Boyd. But when they said like so and so is not going to be able to afford both Will Howard and Avery Johnson, technically he's right. You can't really afford both of them. But that's not to say that they would have kept Will Howard. I think they made their pick. They knew that they could take one, so they took the one they wanted, and that was Avery Johnson. I get that. So I think there is definitely a certain value there, obviously, that was fabricated because those, I mean, no one knows actual numbers, right? If you don't have a legitimate contract in front of you, and sometimes those aren't even fulfilled to the fullest. So at the end of the day, who knows? But like when they say that they wouldn't have been able to afford Will Howard and Avery Johnson, that's probably correct in a vacuum, right? What, like, if Kansas State's paying Avery Johnson what they are, or Ohio State's paying Will Howard what they are, they weren't going to pay them both that number, right? So that's what it comes down to. And the 600 is also something that would not pass as well.
Yeah, that's all. The Will Howard, Avery Johnson, I just think it's even a silly exercise to have the conversation like, could you afford both of them? Well, you can't afford both of them in terms of being able to like literally keep both of them on the roster, even if you had enough money to make them happy. So like, what are we doing here? You know?
Yeah, it's silly because you can't afford both. Well, one, it wouldn't make sense for any team to pay that number to both of them because then you have to keep them both financially happy and then on the field happy, which is impossible to do.
I mean, I guess here's what my guess would be, trying to put on my Ian Boyd hat, which is quite uncomfortable. I'd like to take it off. But if I put on the Ian Boyd hat, he's a Texas fan where they do have Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. So I would guess that that's probably where that comes from. He's like, well, look, you know,
that's true.
I'm in Texas, and we have Arch Manning and Quinn Ewers, and it's all working out fine.
And that makes sense because they're like, well, we can pay these two, but Oklahoma couldn't pay Jackson Arnold and Dylan Gabriel. That was another argument. So it's one of those things too where Texas wants to say they can afford it, but nobody else can.
Correct.
And that's what it is. John's IQ dropped dramatically for a moment when he put on the Ian Boyd hat. Let's get that thing off, John. Yeah, here's that. I found the Twitter.
Everyone not wearing a hat right now.
I found. By the way, you guys never even noticed I was doing a test. I switched home field hats.
Oh, I noticed. That's not. Yeah.
You just roll your eyes at the things I do.
John says I noticed like he's annoyed by the.
I know I annoy you guys. I found the Ian Boyd thread, by the way, and so basically he's arguing that K-State would have kept Will Howard if they could, and he says USC. He's talking about Ryan Day and Lincoln Riley going after Will Howard, and that's indicating that, he was so incredibly coveted, that those are national championship type programs, that the fact they wanted Will Howard means that K-State should have wanted Will Howard to stay, etc. He says USC and Ohio State were not shelling out to get Avery Johnson if he was in the portal, not in 2024, maybe in a future season. Then he says if K-State or Oklahoma had realistic chances at the playoffs in 2024, they don't let Will Howard or Dylan Gabriel walk. And Shahan jumps in and goes, Kansas State was picked second in the conference, man. So, and then Ian Boyd says the Big 12 preseason poll, notorious harbinger of truth.
Which got a point because it favored Texas for so long and they never won anything.
Yeah.
Yes, another thing you would know very well. So, Cole, I think we've figured
I mean, we can understand why he thinks the way he does because there's literally evidence of that happening, and I guess from his Longhorn point of view,
there's a decade and a half of evidence of that. Yes,
maybe we should have him on the show.
I gave Connolly.
I don't agree with him, but his side
Connolly the olive branch. Connolly didn't want it. Connolly wanted no part of it.
So I don't agree with Ian Boyd, but his silo point of view, you can see why he would come to such a conclusion, even if it isn't correct.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, I could see the argument for Oklahoma. Well, Jackson Arnold. I don't know if I saw enough from Jackson Arnold last year.
If Jackson Arnold's a stud, they made the right decision. But I think Dylan Gabriel's pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, I think Dylan Gabriel might win the national title at Oregon this year. It wouldn't surprise me.
I wonder about that, and I'm the biggest Dan Lanning fan out there, but I feel like Gabriel's one of those guys that he has a slightly capped ceiling. He's pretty good, but I don't know if he's. I don't know. We'll see. He's probably good enough to get them close. I don't know if he's good enough to get them there. But
what I will say is Oregon is close to winning a national title. I would be shocked if they don't win one in the next 5 years.
I would be too. Someone asked the other day who's on Twitter, JD Piquel maybe, who's the most likely to go on a Saban run in the next 10 years in college football, and I said Dan Lanning.
I would say there's not going to be a Saban type run because the 12-team playoff probably makes that a little bit. You're not going to win 5 national titles.
I would agree.
So if it was still 2-4 teams in the college football invitational title, whatever it has been, all the different renditions of it, then Dan Lanning could have went and reeled it off. Now you have to win at the very least 3 playoff games on top of, or is it 2? No, it's 3. Quarterfinal, semifinal, final. I just think that there's not going to be that, unless Georgia were to win 2 in the next 4 years, which isn't off the table, then you're probably not going to run into a Saban-like dynasty. But Georgia's on the cusp of it already, to be quite honest.
And Lanning. Yeah. Overrated.
Well, I was let me. Am I gonna have to pay you here?
I'm not going to call him underrated or overrated after only being a head coach for 2 seasons.
That's the thing. If I'm going to Josh Pate you here, I would say, well, what's he rated?
Well, you just said that he could be Oregon could be the premier program in college football in a few years. So
I would. All I said was I would be shocked if they don't win a national title in the next 5 years.
That makes him one of the top 3 coaches probably in college football, and I haven't seen that yet. So
I don't think he's going to have to be the way that they're recruiting. They're recruiting like Alabama, Georgia, or Ohio State right now.
What I saw last year was a guy that lost the game at Washington with some coaching mistakes and then failed to adjust in a repeat matchup against Washington in the Pac-12 championship game and looked like shit.
And you
fell behind by 3 scores.
Years 2, man, I would love to have a coach that could.
They were.
Yeah, I was going to say
year 2.
So they lost in year 2 as a head coach. He lost 2 games to the eventual national.
He's got them at that clip in year 2. Where did Brent Venables have Oklahoma in year 2? Not even making it to a Big 12 championship.
Brent Venables sucks. I'm
just saying, like, compared to every other coach in their second year, look at what Nick Saban did in year 2 at Alabama. You won't like that. You would have called him overrated.
Well, Saban actually inherited a much worse situation at Alabama than Dan Lanning did at Oregon. So, I mean, you remember what a nightmare Alabama was.
It was rough, but Dan Lanning didn't inherit sunshine and rainbows at Oregon. I think Mario Cristobal. So you think Dan Lanning is very overrated?
Yeah, Cristobal sucks.
Yeah, Cristobal's not any good. He's not any good.
Okay, right. We're on the tangent. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Big thanks to all of our sponsors. I'm sure very proud today. Holiday Distillery, Alenko. Make sure you hit them up. Great K-State folks all the way around there. Home Field Apparel. Got Cole 3 different hats that he has worn today.
The end of this podcast was for if you were a college football junkie.
I would assume that a lot of people that are listening here. Mm-hmm. Thanks to Nick Springer for putting up with us, as always. For Derek Young and Cole Manbeck, I'm John Kurtz. Thanks for listening. Podcast listeners, you need to get over to YouTube for the end of this. Thanks for listening to 3 Mall. We'll talk to you soon.